Hey everyone, I'm Nisha. Welcome to Tales and Texts, and I hope your day is going great. So it's been a while since I made my last video. I was going through this whole I can't make another video phase. You know how it is, right? There are some weeks when you're like churning content after content after content, or whatever it is your hobby or interest is, and then the next week you're tired out and you're like, I cannot do this anymore. So I was kind of going through that for a bit, but I'll come back. And in today's video, I wanted to talk to you about a new kind of practice that I've started, a new way of looking at cartomancy. That is something that's evolved out of necessity, but that's something that I'm enjoying a lot as well. And that, my friends, is using postcards as oracle decks. So you might be asking, postcards as oracle decks? That sounds so weird. Or you might be thinking, this must be one of the cleverest ways of doing cartomancy. I don't know what you're leaning towards, but I'm going to take you through why I decided to use postcards as oracle decks, what postcard collections I'm using, how am I using these postcards. So because postcards don't have guidebooks, how do I use it in cartomancy? And we'll have a chat. So first off, my decision to get postcards arose, one, out of necessity, and second, after taking a look at the kind of oracle decks we find online these days, or we find available for purchase these days. Now, so essentially it all boils down to where I'm geographically based. So unlike in the United States or in Europe, India does not have such a huge market for tarot and oracle decks, and so you get a very small number of decks that are actually available mass market. Even within the whole mass market range, I'm sure in the US you would find so many hundreds of decks. Here you just find just handful, max maybe 10 decks at the most. I haven't seen quite a few at all. And even the decks that you do get, whether it's tarot or oracle decks, they're really expensive. So a single deck, I think the least expensive tarot deck, I have mentioned this in a couple of other videos, was actually the Everyday BD Tarot, but even that turned out to be around $12 to $13 in INR when I purchased it, and that is the least expensive deck. And when you compare it, and I know you're thinking, okay, if you're in the US or the UK or anywhere else, you might be thinking, hey, $10-12 is not such a big deal. But if you compare it in terms of, you convert it into Indian rupee, because the Indian rupee is significantly lower in value compared to the US dollar, even a $10 deck or an $11 or a $12 deck is very expensive for the average Indian. We don't have the monetary value to justify the expense for a product that is not a survival tool or survival necessity. So when you're purchasing decks like this, the only reason I've been able to purchase decks in my collection is because I do have the privilege of having a good job, and this job affords me the luxury of buying decks, but not everyone is like that. And so when you look at the kind of oracle decks, I'm going to stick to oracle decks, but this sort of applies to tarot as well. So when you buy oracle decks in India, you don't get, first off, many options, and the options that you do get is very expensive. And in fact, oracle decks options are way lesser compared to tarot decks in India. So you have such few decks, and the decks that you have are super expensive. Now, when you want to spend money on an oracle deck, you have to ask yourself, is this purchase justified? Is this deck worth spending so much on? Now, some of the oracle decks, the $10-12 that I mentioned was for the tarot deck. Now, oracle decks in India start only beyond the $20 range. So right off the bat is super expensive. So you need to ask yourself, okay, is the quality and content of the deck worth spending so much on? And to an extent, some of them are. But if you look at trying to expand your collection, or if you are going to become a professional reader and you want to have multiple decks for different types of clients, then your choices start to get limited. Now, personally for me, in my practice, I'm someone who uses a lot of animal and plant themed decks. And when you look at animal and plant themed decks, you have only a certain number of decks that you can actually use. So you have decks like the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit, which is available in India. I'm going to be only mentioning decks that are available easily in India, and not the decks that you would find anywhere else in the world. So that is one deck which is animal themed that you get over here. And there are a couple more other import decks that you can get them imported through Amazon. So they will be very expensive, but you can still get them imported, like the I think it's called the Animal Spirit Oracle. It's kind of like this golden box that's there. And there's another deck, I can't recollect its name. It's basically, it merges animals with crystals in it. So there are a bunch of decks that you do get. And for botanicals, the number of botanical decks are very limited. You have to import most of these botanical themed oracle decks. Now, if you're looking at decks that double as tarot and oracle decks, then you have the Herbcrafters Tarot and the Spirit Song Tarot, which can be used as oracle decks as well. And once again, they are expensive. So you don't have a lot of options and they're expensive. And even the ones that you do get, once you start acquiring more decks, you start to notice that the type of animals and the type of plants mentioned in each deck happen to be almost the same. So if it's an animal themed deck, you would see the same elephant, the same lion, the same horse, the same turtle, the same bear. And it's kind of like a template in terms of what animal spirits to work with. And I do understand that these are major animals. A lot of cultures around the world do use these animals as their guides. They worship these animals, and so I get why these animals are represented in these decks. But if you have only certain amount of money to spend and you want to buy oracle decks, it's not really worth the investment in terms of acquiring a deck that has the same set of animals. And as you know, oracle decks are often, they're very limited in the number of cards you get. They could range from anywhere between 30 to 60, and so you would be spending a lot of money for a very small number of cards. And even the animals and the plants that you do get in a deck, even if they're different, a lot of these species come from the Americas, specifically North America. Some do come from other parts such as Europe, but that's very rare. Most of the decks that you see online, most of the decks that you get in India and everywhere else, they have North American plants, North American animals, essentially everything revolving around North America. And while such decks are usable, they're not particularly helpful if you're looking at using these oracle cards in a more non-divinatory way. What I mean is not just like a card pull of the day to see what message that animal brings, but for example, you want to use it in a magical working. You want to embody the energy and the essence of the animal in a magical working. You want to use these cards to connect with the animals or the plants in your neighborhood. You want to replace them on the altar. Maybe you don't have space in your apartment to buy a particular type of plant or to keep a particular type of animal in your apartment as a pet. And you want a particular specific type of species that is local to the region. And you don't get access to that. You will probably have to get a printout of that plant or animal elsewhere and then put it up on your altar, or use it in your divination practice, use it in your magical working, or use it even for studying. Like a lot of us use our decks not just for our spiritual and philosophical studies, but we also use it for our scientific studies. In fact, that's one of the recommendations that I give in my video on how to reconnect with your tarot and oracle practice. Look beyond the spiritual and go into the science. When we understand the mechanics of how the world really works, the physical aspect of it, the reality of it, we can gain a lot of spiritual and philosophical knowledge from that as well. So we might not be able to connect with the cards completely because all of these plants and animals and crystals and so on are actually not endemic to our region. They're not local. And for me, I've personally found this as a problem because a lot of my daily magical practice involves using very local ingredients. involves using local plants, involves praying to the local deities, to the calling upon the local energies. And so when I don't get that in an oracle deck, I find it difficult to use that deck in the long run. And so that's when I decided, okay, let me think outside the box for now. Obviously, I can't get an oracle deck that I want, because such decks are very limited. They might not even have been made, and unless I make one myself, I don't know, maybe someday I might, I don't know, chances of getting such a deck are very slim to none. So let me think outside the box. And that's when I remembered that there was a product on my Amazon wish list that had been there for quite some time, for a little over a year, and I had been waiting for the right time to purchase it, but nothing seemed to justify the purchase. And I thought, you know what, why don't I revisit it? And that product happened to be a set of postcards. Now, the postcards I'm going to be talking about are actually a collection called Welcome to the Museum Postcards. You might have seen them online. You do find them on Amazon. Perhaps you even find them in your local bookstore in the US or in Europe. I haven't seen these in any local bookstore, at least in the city where I live. Perhaps it's there in any one of the major bookstores. I don't know. If you're in India and you want to get these postcards, you can find them on Amazon. And do go check out your local bookstores, because if you can find them in your local bookstores, it's much better to support local bookstores. All right, so I really enjoyed the artwork on these postcards, because the 3 postcard sets that I purchased have to do with plants, which is the Botanicum Postcards. They have to do with animals, which is the Animalium Postcards. And finally, the final set of postcard that I purchased, I bought it because I did not want to spend a lot of money on decks like Memento Mori or the Antique Anatomy Tarot, but I really wanted something that represented the physical body, and that's why I purchased the Anatomicum Postcards. Now, I will show you a couple of cards from each of these postcard decks, and I'll talk a little bit about how I intend to use these postcards. So in case you want to do the same, definitely you can follow the tips that I provided, and please do share any other tips that you are using, which I might not be using right now. I would love to know. So right off the bat, how much do they cost? Okay, so I purchased this during the Great Indian Sale on Amazon. So Amazon keeps having a lot of different sales. I might have got the name wrong, so please forgive me. So this particular sale had almost 50% off on all products. And so I paid around 800 for each of the 3 decks. So that comes up to approximately a little over $10, kind of between $10 to $11 for each of the decks. And considering that there are some decks in my collection which cost, say, a single deck which costs like $30, $40, $60, expensive. $10 for one deck is actually pretty good. And if you are someone like me who enjoys using oracle decks, I think this would be a great investment. So each came up to around $10, which is around 800 INR in Indian rupees. And I think the sale is still going on for these 3. I don't know how much it costs right now, but I bought this about 2 weeks ago. So you can go check it out. I think the sale is still there. So each of these postcard decks contain 50 postcards. And each of the postcards contain painted images by different artists. Now, I'll just show you the Botanicum postcards first. So right off the bat, this is a hardcover box. It's so beautiful, so lush. As you can see, there's some description about the box. And this particular postcard set, the Botanicum set, is also sponsored by the Kew Gardens in the UK, which is known for having a collection of really exotic plants from all of the nations that England colonized. I don't know how to feel about it. I'm kind of conflicted, but being India being one of the colonized nations. But the quality of this deck is really nice, so I'm gonna refrain from commenting on that for a while. So we have, this is one of the postcards. As you can see, there is an artwork over here. Now this is very minimalistic. You can see entire detailing of the plant in its complete glory. Behind you have some space to write. It is, like I mentioned, a postcard after all. In your message and the address, and right here in the bottom, if you can see it, you have the name of the plant. This is the water lettuce, so you have the name of the plant over here. So in that way you have postcards of different kinds. So for example, this is the turkey tail fungus. I'll just show you a couple. This is a collection of different types of algae. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm holding this up. Yep, here you go. Different types of algae. Again, you have all the names over here. So if there are multiple items on the card, you have, from left to right, right to left, you have an instruction or like a sort of like a guidance as to how to read the card in terms of identifying images. So it's a really beautiful deck. The card stock is amazing. This is one of the best card stocks ever. This is a really thick card, and I think if you are not intending to use this set as a oracle deck, you can still get this for your artwork, for your journaling, for scrapbooking, or for wall art. Wall art is something that you can definitely do with this. So yeah, these are just some of the Botanicum postcards. So there are 50, like I said, this entire set is Botanicum. I really liked the fact that there were plants from around the world in this, which is what made it so worth the investment for me, because I can find so many Indian specific plants in there as well. The number of Indian specific plants aren't complete or completely accurate. You have a certain number, just like you have a certain number from around the world, and I think it's the representation and diversity of the botanical life that really matters over here. Similarly, we have the Anatomicum Postcards once again. So this is not from the Kew Gardens. That was the only one from the Kew Gardens. This is from Welcome to the Museum itself. And so once again, hardcover. It's like a flip open box with a ribbon over here that you can use to lift the cards. Let me show you a couple of cards. Now you have the image of the animal. And once again, at the back, you have at this corner over here, you can read the name, the common ostrich. So you have birds, you have mammals, you have aquatic creatures, you have marsupials. In terms of the artwork itself, I think some of the cards in the Animalium postcard deck definitely appear a bit cartoonish. For example, this card right here, I'll just pick this up. This is a koala. So it does look very drawn, right? Whereas in the Botanicum postcards, it feels like really well done. Here, some of the cards are a little rough, but most of them are really great. Because of the the minimalistic background, you really get to appreciate the nuances within the artwork. So yeah, so you basically have a lot of different cards over here. The lighting isn't doing a lot of justice to the brightness of the cards. If you get a chance to see the Amazon listing, please do. I I can put that link down below. Please note that all of these decks were purchased with my own money, and this is not an affiliate video of any kind. Alright, now finally we're progressing on to the Anatomicum Postcards, and I think this has definitely been one of my favorites. I think for all three, this is my most favorite. And I think one has to do with the fact that I don't have any oracle deck that represents the human body. Whereas I have decks, both tarot and oracle, that represent botanical and animal energy. So I don't have anything like this. And I looked online to find out information about Black in the Moon's decks, you know, the Antique Anatomy and the Memento Mori. And while those decks are gorgeous to look at, I've heard and I've read so many reviews that are negative about the decks, ranging right from the really papery cardstock that just crumples when you use the decks once, to absolutely, you know, kind of a shoddily done guidebook. The packaging is not great, especially when it's shipping and shipping internationally. A lot of customers have also given negative reviews about how the shipping has resulted in the package tearing and the cards being damaged and so on, and also about the creator's response when complaints are made. So I'm not going to comment on whether these allegations and these complaints are true or not, but this is something that I've read on Amazon. This is something that I've watched on YouTube videos. So I'm sure if you find any videos about reviews for these decks, you might find people who don't really like it as well. So and it's super expensive, and it goes up to INR 4,500, 5,000 for a single deck, which is ridiculous if you ask me. So especially for a deck that is so poorly done. So I didn't want to spend so much, and here I had a 50 card deck for just 800 rupees, so I really wanted it. So once again, this is again a hardcover box, flip open, and you get 50 cards over here. Around 7 or 8 of those are sort of like a collage work of all the cards involved over here. So those are something that I actually stuck on the wall, so I don't have any of those to show right now. So they kind of bring together in collage what the deck holds. And I do want to say that this particular deck, the Anatomicum, can be triggering for some people. This is like, we also have images and paintings of bacteria and virus over here. Like, this is the virus one. This is just so pretty, and it's so unbelievable to think that these critters are the ones that cause so many diseases and illnesses, but they also have the capacity to heal us as well. So yeah, as I was saying, this deck definitely does have the capacity to trigger people, especially if you are sensitive to medical imagery. And so I would definitely urge you to consider whether these kinds of cards are something up your alley, if this is something that you would probably want to use, probably want to have it in your house, because, and that's completely fine, you know, it's not for everyone. That's completely fine. So just think about that. What I really loved is that they show different hand gestures like this. So there are multiple cards like this of hand gestures, leg gestures, and so on, which show you how your muscles work and bones work when you're doing them. So you can actually, you know, mimic the hand gestures, and you can visualize what is working in your hand at that moment. So yeah, Anatomicum. Let me see. Okay, here is another virus / bacteria / germ kind of a so yeah, you have images of fetuses here as well, underdeveloped fetuses and completely developed fetuses. So yeah, definitely a deck that you should consider. Think about it twice, because if you are uncomfortable with this kind of imagery, you may not end up using this. Even if it's a little inexpensive compared to other decks online, you may not end up using it. Alright, so this was the postcard haul I had. I do plan on doing a complete walkthrough video and flip through video of all 3 decks someday. That will come, but I just need a couple more weeks, because I have some rejigging to do in terms of how I film the flip through videos. For now, we'll move on to the last part of this video, which is how do I plan on using these postcards? Because if you are someone who enjoy looking at these postcards and maybe you're considering getting them, these tips might help you. Now, first and foremost, for the Anatomicum cards, because I have very specific plans for these. Since the Anatomicum cards actually deal with the human body, I do intend on using it for healing rituals and healing spells. Having these different organs of the body, knowing what they look like, knowing what the structure feels like, and understanding what might be happening within my body is a great way for me to hone in on specific areas of my body when I'm healing myself, when I am trying to reduce stress, perhaps even in meditations, when especially we're doing a body check-in, having an image of a particular body or the entire skeletal system or the entire muscular or neural system can be really helpful. So that is something definitely that I'm looking at. This will also help me with protection magic, because once again, self-protection and protection when we're traveling, protection when we're home alone, protection when we're doing whatever. So I have very specific uses for this particular deck. Also, of course, I am someone who loves learning about medical things. Medical dramas are one of my favorites, and although a lot of information in the show is sensationalized, I do believe studying these postcards as they are, just looking at the images and seeing the name of the organ on the back side of the card can allow us to do more scientific research to understand the organ better. And I've always believed that once you understand the scientific principles behind something, you can unearth so much spiritual wisdom from that particular thing, whatever it is. So that is something what I'm going to be using the Anatomicum cards for. Now, the Animalium and Botanicum postcards, once again, I will be using them for my daily oracle pulls, for magical correspondences. So for example, if I pull a card which has a lotus on it, I would want to use that card for any spell or some ritual or some healing work that I'm doing for myself or whatever it is, which needs the correspondence of lotus. So instead of trying to get a physical lotus, which is very expensive even in India, although lotus is endemic to India, having this card definitely makes that easy. Now, similarly, if it's an animal, I want, let's say, the tenacity of an octopus or the creativity of an octopus. Obviously, it is illegal to have wildlife aspects. I'm just gonna say straight out disclaimer: do not keep wild animals as pets, please. It is also unethical in terms of, because it is a torture for them. And again, I'm not casting any judgments on people who have currently kept wild animals as pets, but please do reconsider sending them back into the wild. All right, so for example, like I said, if I want the energy of the creative octopus, the tenacious octopus, I can keep the card which has the octopus imagery on it, the painting on it, and I can meditate upon it. I can use it in my daily divination work, I can use it in my message for the day, I can use it in my magical working, whatever it is. I can use it in my journaling, I can use it in my artwork. I can put it up on my altar and keep it there for the entire day or for the entire week. Whatever it is, I can manifest and do that. Now, some of the cards, for example, let me just pull this out. Just see this. Right, so some of the cards have multiple plants or multiple animals on them. So how do I intend on narrowing down on what I want? So for example, if I'm doing a conscious pull, for example, what I mean by conscious pull is I am looking at the images on the card and consciously selecting a particular card to work with, and within that card I'm consciously selecting a particular item. So for example, I might consciously choose the corn to work with the corn, and I can study about the corn, I can study about the spiritual aspects of the corn, the scientific aspects of the corn, and go ahead with that. Now, what if I am doing a digital download? Now, what do I mean by digital download? I actually have a video podcast dedicated to that. Now, this is something that people typically call blind pulls, wherein you basically don't see the images on the card, but then you just shuffle and you just pick a card, the backs are facing you, and then you turn it on the card and you see the image. A lot of people call this as blind pulls. I personally don't like that phrase because I feel it is offensive to people with visual disabilities, and it is also inaccessible, the terminology itself, and such limiting language can be detrimental to our perception of the world and to our interactions with other people. So I call this digital download, wherein spirit guides us in selecting the cards. Now, if through a digital download I select this card and I turn it around and I see it's this, then I can just let spirit, let my deities, let my elements, let my energy guide me to a particular entity, or I can just close my eyes. Once I turn the card around, I can just close my eyes and just let my finger drop on whichever thing I'm attracted to, and so it's this. So then I figure out, okay, what is this? I'm going to look at this particular item. So this would be from left to right. So this is the final one. This is the bread wheat. So that I'm going to study about the bread wheat. So that is something that I'm planning on doing. Beyond this, of course, if at any point in time I feel like certain cards have outlived their utility, or maybe I've gained as much as I can from them, I do intend on using them as wall arts or for pasting them in my art journal or my magical journal. So I'm experimenting with art as a form of magic, as a form of personal expression, and to me, anything that empowers is magic. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. Will I be using them in readings for YouTube? I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Possibly not. But I do have another plan for it, in terms of starting another video playlist, where once I am done with my studies of a particular card, of a particular entity in that card, I do want to make short videos about not just the scientific facts surrounding the card, but what spiritual correspondences you can get. For example, a couple of facts about, let's say, the Asian elephant, and the spiritual messages or spiritual cultural knowledge around the Asian elephant. For example, its relation to the Hindu god Ganpati or Ganesha, and how an elephant's energy is embodied in different Asian cultures. So I am planning on doing a playlist like that, and if I do, it will possibly start sometime in the month of September and go on from there. And that will take some time to complete, because there are so many animals in the world, and once I run out of all the animals and plants in these two decks, I might consider just talking in general about animals and plants that are not covered in here, maybe even making my own deck which includes animals and plants not in these two decks. And perhaps I might do the same with the Anatomicum cards as well. So yeah, there you go. So these are some ways that I'm planning on using them. So divination, magical working, studies, artwork, and just immersing myself in the wonders of the world. So yeah, postcards as oracle decks. So there you go. This brings me to the end of this video. Do let me know, do you have these postcards? Welcome to the Museum also has other postcard boxes like this. I couldn't get my hands on those this time, but maybe in the future I will. If you're not a postcard fan but you would prefer the books, they also have complete books on the same subjects, such as Anatomicum is a complete book on the anatomy, Animalium is a complete book on animals, and Botanicum is a complete book on botany. But I do want to let you know that based on the reviews that I saw online, they are mostly textbook style books and not fun facts books. So they could be a tad dry, but then you can do your own research and come to the conclusion that you want. But for these postcards in particular, my personal experience has been great. The quality is amazing. The price is very affordable for Indians in particular. And there are plenty of cards here for you to use in whichever way you want. And you can even send this across as a gift to someone as a postcard, because ultimately it is a postcard, right? So yeah, let me know, do you have these cards? Do you intend on getting these postcards, and how do you plan on using them? All right, write to me in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and remember to enable the notification so you can get notified every time I post a new video. All right, if you stuck around so far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode of Tales in Text. Bye.